Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So, in today's session we will be studying about energy mix, and we will also, before moving to energy mix, trying to understand that what all strategies are needed for achieving energy security, which we discussed at at length in the last session. So, these are the concepts which we will be covering in this session. We will try to understand what are the challenges to energy security. We will then read about energy mix, and then we will see that what are the sources from where we are getting, what is the division reason wise on the generation, on the consumption pattern and all. This is just a statistics to understand that where do we stand. Now, when you talk about the strategy, as I have discussed in the last session, that energy security is a vital component not only for the development of the power market, but also for overall development of the country and the inhabitants of the country. And for this you need to have a very robust strategy. It is a known fact that import alone cannot help you, and at the same time there is no enough resources available domestically for sustaining this sector. So, you have to draw a balance. There is a need to draw a balance where on the one hand there shall be proper tapping, harnessing of the indigenous sources, and then how to work on efficiency, how to work on conservation, so that there should be lessening of dependency from the outside. And as I said, that harnessing indigenous sources and particularly renewables will be possible only when necessary technological development is taking place in the country, and that requires involvement of time, involvement of resources to bring a product which can be a game changer. And electricity as a product you need immediately, because this is one of the lifeline for the economic growth. This is lifeline for fulfilling social entitlements. So, the country cannot wait until there is innovation in the sector. Country cannot wait until that time. And thus, hand holding is required between developed countries and developing countries. And this hand holding is already there, but that is there in more in the terms of supply side, because there is sort of dependency of supplying of gas and oil, as I said in the last session, from Gulf regions when you consider India as a case at hand. And you can very well visualize that this kind of dependency is also getting driven by geopolitical considerations. There are geopolitical considerations involved into it, that how the politics is playing a role, what kind of international relations are being established. All these have a role to play in energy security, and therefore what is needed is cooperation, coordinated and at the same time sufficient focus to develop internal market in terms of tapping of the resources, internal market in terms of investing to make the fuel clean when you talk about conventional sources. So, what you find that growing population and the growing expectation of individuals to lead a better life is getting centered, getting focused on the very aspect of energy security. And therefore, what is needed is to have a broader approach to ensure that it is not only about how smoothly a supply can be ensured of energy sources, but also to see that how there can be effective management on the demand side, how good we are in achieving energy efficiency. Those factors are also to be brought in. So, the earlier approach which was there in 70s, 1970s, where the focus was only to ensure that there should not be any bottleneck in the supply of crude oil from the Gulf countries. Now, what is needed is also, and it is happening because of the agenda set in 2003 Act, that let the necessary strategy be there also for indigenous sources, our own, what belongs to our own, and in that obviously renewables play a significant role. So, now it is more inclusive, I would say. Why it is more inclusive? Because we are not talking only about supply, we are also talking about demand, we are also talking about exploring our own resources, be it in gas sector, be it in oil sector, or be it in renewables. And therefore, there are 4 factors which are to be considered for anchoring the very discourse on energy security: availability, accessibility, affordability and acceptability. It must be available, it must be accessible, it must be within reach, it must be affordable, and also at the same time it must be acceptable. Acceptable, what does it mean in terms of when you visualize a situation of the import happening and then you are being pushed to the corner to get the supply. Acceptability also would mean in terms of cleaner sources, in terms of what is minimizing the damage to the environment. So, these are the factors which are there in the account. Now, energy security is one issue. You would find even the Supreme Court has said in this 2000 judgment, which is a phenomenal judgment on sharing agreement with regard to production of gas at KG Basin. There was a family dispute between Anil Ambani and Mukesh Ambani. There was agreement between these two brothers about the supply of electricity, supply of gas from KG Basin, and ultimately the question was raised that what shall be the effect, the bindingness of such agreements. I am not getting into that debate because that is a separate subject altogether. But then on energy security, the court has made a remarkable observation. Court has said that natural resource is such which cannot be sold in such a manner so that interest of the nation is compromised. And in this regard, the court has said that there is a need to come up with a comprehensive policy on energy security. That is what the court says, that there is a need, let there be policy, let there be a legislation to address energy security. Because we are dealing with a very delicate issues. On the one hand, we are dealing with the import matter where you have the issue of foreign exchange getting used for buying that sources. On the other hand, you also need to invest on the resources which are available in your own country. So, delicate issues are involved, and all these are for welfare of human beings, and that is what is suggested, that let there be a comprehensive policy. So, this is what the court says. Now, what are the challenges to energy security? That is also look at it. Policy change. There has to be enough attraction for the investors to come, and we have read while understanding the salient features of Electricity Act of 2003 that changes are being done in terms of providing for open access, in terms of long term power purchase agreement, so that there will be a sort of confidence to the investor. All these changes are being done, and we know very well that coal is still contributing larger segment in generation of electricity, and it is certainly one source which causes a lot of environmental damage. And that is why the issue is that can we think of replacing, if not entirely, at least substantial part with renewables, and that is possible only when you have a necessary policy in place. Electricity Act deals with electricity from other sources. I would say there are scant references of renewables, but then of late we have seen that regulations are being made by the regulatory bodies for promoting renewables, be it a policy on rooftop, be it a policy on integrating with the grid from renewables. The necessary efforts are being made. Then the issue of accessibility challenge. Accessibility of electricity, and which must be a reliable one, not with a poor quality, and then also of affordable prices, including with the greener energy. Infrastructural skill related challenge is there, that when you talk about technical and commercial losses, you need to have necessary investment on technical side, you need to impart the necessary skill to manpower for addressing those issues. The kind of responsibility which is entrusted on DISCOMs. There is a question that whether they do have adequate skilled manpower for handling those responsibilities. And then the issue of maintaining the balance. What is the balance? On the one hand, allowing the market forces to take a call what is good or bad for them, and government playing a only regulatory role, and on the other hand, responsibility of ensuring availability of electricity to the marginalized section of the society. because electricity is one which cannot be made available only with a factor of paying cost. So, it is a debate between consumer versus citizen. Are we looking at only the paying ability, or we are looking for a mid path, we are looking for somewhere a kind of balancing factor, that how it can be ensured that the one who cannot afford, they are to be made empowered, so that in time to come they can be in a better place to afford the cost, but then till that time there has to be some kind of support mechanism to be made in place, to be put in place. Now, there is economic challenge. What is economic challenge? That, as I said, dependency on import, and then dependency on import, but at the same time it is also needed that whatever is there with you, you must ensure, the government must ensure that it is optimally used for the growth of the sector. And recently the government has liberalized the coal mining policy, which certainly is going to go in a long term sense to the benefit of the market. Then the question, as I said, that availability of electricity is needed also for those who cannot pay. So, for that you have a subsidy scheme, for that you have a direct benefit transfer scheme, but then what is needed is that it must operate in a transparent manner, so that the intended beneficiaries, the targeted beneficiaries are only getting the benefits, getting the the services which are needed, and not the one who are in a position to pay. Now, this is what through this map I want to through this graph I want to portray one thing, that when you look at the sector, the sources which is going to drive this market, you find that by 2050 largest portion would be of renewables, and the contribution of coal is minimizing. It is coming to 14%. Now, this is what is the trend, and accordingly the planning must be made, so that we should not left behind. Enough investment is needed to make electricity from renewables competitive. Already of late we are reading about it, that it is very much possible, and also this will help the government to make a plan that how much to invest if there is a government owned company in thermal power plant, or how much investors should be asked to come and invest in this sector. So, when you look at the statistics, you find that it is a very broad one. It is not only about generation and consumption, and it is in a broader sense in terms of oil, gas, coal, renewables, lignite, all the sources. And if you look at the statistics, you find that all India gross electricity generation in 1920, you would find major chunk is coming from thermal. Renewable is making improvement, but then still we are in a big way dependent upon thermal electricity coming from thermal power plant. When you look at the installed capacities, here again you would find that the larger is from coal again. Renewable is doing very good, renewable, as there is a steady improvement, renewable is going to be a tough competitor for the coal based installed capacity. In fact, if you look at the electricity plan of the government, you would find that it is suggested that new coal based thermal power plant is not to be encouraged. Now, in this installed capacity, nuclear is one where we also need to work, because if you look at the very evolution of independency in the Europe, that how they have become more secured on the front of energy, they have invested a lot on nuclear, though there are issues with regard to environmental degradation, with regard to threat to human life because of the fuel which is used in nuclear energy, but then that can very well be addressed by a robust technological support. So, nuclear is one factor which is also to be looked at in order to minimize the dependency on coal based electricity generation. Now, installed capacity, when you look at it, you find that private participants are playing a major role, and then you have a center and the state. Now, this certainly is a result of the opening up of the market. I have, while discussing on the salient features, suggested that one of the major reforms introduced in the sector in 90s was to open up the sector for the private players, and we are seeing the benefit of it. And in the coming session, when we will be discussing about generation, I will also explain that how the law has addressed to de-licensed generation sector. Now, when you look at the reason wise installed capacity, you would find that western, southern and northern, they are doing equally, they are somewhere equally placed, more or less, and then eastern is there and northeastern is there. So, you find that there is sort of asymmetrical arrangement, and here the one grid can play a very significant role, that one nation one grid can play a significant role, so that there can be a smooth supply of electricity from one region to another region whenever, as and when it is being demanded. This is the electricity consumption. Here again, if you find industrial consumers are our largest buyers of electricity, and then you have a commercial one, domestic is again very high, and then agriculture is one sector which is to be looked at, because they are also consuming on a very higher side, but then the paying ability is a factor to be taken into account when we talk about supplying electricity to farmers, that what shall be the scheme for, what shall be the design for ensuring that, because they need electricity, but at the same time the factor of their paying ability is to be looked at. So, now come to energy mix. As I said that we need to look into all the resources, and in that you find conventional as well as non-conventional is there, and energy demand has grown in last 2-3 decades exponentially, largely because of the urbanization happening. People are moving from rural areas to urban areas in the quest of better life, in search of better social security, and because of good annual economic growth, a large population is now moving from poverty line to upper level. Good number of middle class are being now there, and they have a good purchasing power, and with good purchasing power they are certainly contributing to the economic growth. annual consumption is also growing, electricity demand will grow, and as I said, the factors are urbanization, growing middle class, investment in manufacturing segments, investment in industry in general, the way it is happening, the way we are taking up the agenda of electric vehicles, all these are factors which are contributing. So, what is been experienced is that the installed capacity is generating, and that is from all kind of sources and in all the regions. It is not only coal based is developing, only the coal based thermal power is contributing. You find that, as I had shown you earlier, that renewables are also contributing in a big way. Now, this is going to play a very significant role in the growth of energy market, that it will now bring a sort of mechanism for meeting the demand of the consumer at the peak hours. Though it is true that the reliance is still more on coal for electricity and IL for energies, but then over a period of time, renewable will be also contributing in the same quantum or maybe in a higher quantum than coal and IL. And this is something which is being driven not because of the policy adopted at the domestic level, but also the way things are unfolding at the global level, where the world leaders together advancing the cause of environment. And that is why it is said that the renewables is going to be a big contributor, as I said, in the energy mix, and this is something which must be a priority area, and it is already a priority area when you look at the growth of renewables even in India. When you look at how the government perceives the energy mix in time to come, that which sources would contribute in what way, what shall be the futuristic way. This 2016 draft policy, I would say, it is draft, it is still under discussion, electricity policy, wherein it has been suggested that let necessary focus be on renewables, so that lesser dependency would be there on coal, which is not considered as good source of generating electricity for for environmental purposes. So, by 2040 it has been suggested that by 46 to 52% of the power capacity will be from renewables, particularly from solar and wind, and it can be achieved when there is necessary infrastructural development, infrastructural improvement is there. For example, how good the technical upgradation is there in the grid to connect it with renewables, because we can very well make out like solar cannot continue to supply electricity in monsoon, same is the case with wind. So, there has to be necessary technological improvement in order to maintain the balance in grid. And there is another development which is taking place, particularly in renewables, where we are finding that the consumers, they are also becoming producers of electricity, that society, residential society is installing rooftop solar plant, individuals are installing solar panels. So, somewhere the idea is to promote renewables, and if it is happening in a closer smaller network, a smaller setup, then perhaps mini and micro grid becomes important. This is all for today's. Thank you very much.